Hi guys, Chantal here from Nerdy Mama, and today we're gonna make this 8-bit Mario mushroom cutting board. Let's do this. Oh, who eats raw mushroom? Oh God. Okay, first things first, let me be really clear. I totally screwed up on this project. I should have gone a different direction. However, by the time I realized what was going on, I totally could not go backwards. So you guys that are way better woodworkers than me, you're gonna catch this way earlier in the project than I did. But I will note what I did wrong and let you guys, see where you can do it differently to make this a better project. But I tell you what, this 8-bit Mario mushroom cutting board is the coolest thing in my kitchen. You guys, I have a mushroom on which I can cut mushrooms. It's so cool. I started this project by sitting down on the computer and drawing out a plan on Excel for exactly which blocks I'd need. You can get that by going to my Patreon. The next step was to kind of get enough pieces of wood together that were long enough and then also flat enough. So I rough cut some, and then I ran them through my planer, and then I started cutting some lengths, and my fence wasn't locked, and so then it was a total disaster. And then I fixed the fence, and then I had to recut everything. So that is not the mistake I was talking about. I managed to turn off the power to the building. Like, this was a whole lot of fun just getting the lengths cut. So also, don't use my table saw technique. I have terrible table saw technique. But at the end of the day, I got those basically sticks cut, and then I went and I put a stop block up on my chop saw to cut off the 1-inch blocks, but that didn't work out really well. About every third one got kerf marks all over it and was just thrown and was a mess. So I went over to the table saw and did there, and that was a million times of cuts that I really didn't want to make. So then I had this brilliant idea to actually hot glue the sticks together, and to keep them straight, I pushed them up against a quick square there, and then I was able to just put them against my stop block on the table saw, and then I could cut out several in one swipe. The only problem with that was that now there was hot glue all over the little squares. So once I got them all cut out, which took forever, by the way, even doing them on the table saw, and then they would get small enough that I was then afraid to actually cut the end of my fingers off. So it was like this whole back and forth thing with the table saw, and then with that hot glue, because I had smushed them together and the hot glue was so thin, I ended up having to pry some of them apart, and it actually damaged a few of the edges, but it was okay because I planned on sanding all of them anyway because of the hot glue, and I basically apparently don't know how to cut anything straight, so sanding it was. So basically, the sander is a lifesaver. So I was able to sand off all of the hot glue, as well as get those edges where I had torn it up, peeling the hot glue off, or peeling apart two pieces that were hot glued together, sanding those down, and I got everything kind of clean. Any kerf marks from the chop saw I was able to sand off. Basically, the sander saved this project. So I went ahead and did a dry fit of all my pieces as I sanded them so that I could get them nice and neat and make sure that, all of them, I had enough of them, because that's a thing, you've got to have like 300 of this and 150 of that. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of pieces. So I just wanted to make sure I had them all before I wandered off and started gluing anything up. That would have been terrible. So when I was ready to glue them up, I decided I needed like a jig almost. So I cut a fence panel in half and then screwed it onto either side of another fence panel, because I have a lot of fence panels laying around. And then I covered all of that with duct tape and put kind of a stop block on each end. And that basically created a duct tape channel, of all things, with a stop block at each end, that I could then put the individual blocks up against and kind of inside the channel as I glued them, and that would keep them straight going in 3 directions. And of course you can see here exactly what I'm doing. I'm just putting the Titebond 3 glue in between 2 of them and then lining them up. I'm actually picking them up from my dry fit area so that I knew exactly what I was doing and I wasn't getting them mixed up. And then I just put like a scrap piece of wood over the top and screwed it into the fence panels and put a clamp on top of it so that that specific little section didn't bow. Now, I'd like to point out that I still had a little bit of bowing, but this jig really did help, and it really was worth it to get it all tight and strong and everything, even though you're fixing to see the most dramatic and terrible thing ever to happen in Chantal's world. And then this happened. No! You guys, I have to sit down and pause for a minute. I am this close to just calling this project off. The lengths of the individual blocks won't stay glued together, and I think it's one of 2 things. So this is the first time I'm using Titebond 3, and I'm certain that the glue actually works. I mean, otherwise, why would they sell it? How could they sell it if it didn't work? But the thing is, either it got too cold, because it's been really cold this week, and it did drop below freezing, but I thought it was warm enough out here in the workshop. But who am I to know what temperature it is out here at 3 a.m. in the morning? I'm not out here. But the other thing is, what if I have done this wrong? I've been gluing them end grain to end grain. What if I was supposed to, but see, I couldn't have. See, okay, so the thing is, if you glue them side grain to side grain, the wood is going to absorb less of the glue. That's probably what I'm doing wrong. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I made this mistake. Of course I should have gone side grain to side grain. Okay, so here's the problem. So when you glue things end grain to end grain, the wood is going to absorb more of the glue, and I should have known that. But what should have happened, what I should have done was find wood that I liked all of the end grain and could have glued those in their blocks in the lines. But unfortunately, that's not what I did. The wood that I liked was not consistent all the way through. On one side it was one color, and on the other it was another, and it was just a matter of what wood I had laying around, so I didn't even think of doing that. And of course now I have wasted who knows how many hours now, because I'm gonna have to re-glue all of these again. This is the 3rd time. This is actually the 3rd time. Before I decided to pause and talk to you about what was wrong, what was taking so long, was the 3rd time that I'm gluing this together. So anyway, we're gonna use extra glue. We're gonna see what we can do to salvage this project and keep moving. Cool. So after getting the individual links glued up, finally, I did have a little bit of bowing, like I said, and then a lot of glue kind of squeeze out. So I took them over to the belt sander, and I literally just sanded and sanded every side until it was nice and neat and square all the way around. Now, you may be wondering exactly how I thought in the world that I was going to get these things square on a sander. Well, I did a little trick. See, if I could just push them against the side of this table, I could tell that there was a gap or not and decide if I needed to sand some more. So once it was all sanded, it was time to glue each of those lengths together. So I built yet another little jig, and I covered that in wax paper, as you could see, and a little bit of duct tape to keep it sealed, just in case there was any squeeze out that went everywhere. I really didn't want this Mario mushroom cutting board to be glued to a piece of OSB. That didn't seem really fun. So again, using that Type Bond 3 and then just going along and pushing them in place. Now, unfortunately, I did get one row out of alignment somehow while I was doing this. Right there probably is exactly probably when I got it out of alignment. And but I figured, you know, it was too late once I realized it, and it wasn't worth going back and breaking it all apart. So I just screwed the edges in place and then wiped off what squeeze out I could. And then I went back in and actually put some more glue in areas that I felt like needed it for some reason, because I'm an insane person. And then I weighed it down with the heaviest things that I could find in our workshop. Let that sit for a couple days, came back out, peeled the wax paper off, and it just came right off. And then just peeled off that squeeze out glue off the top. Now, you might already be able to notice a little problem here. It still wasn't perfectly even though I had sanded and everything, it wasn't perfectly even. And I did some hand sanding, but I also decided that it would probably be best, because it's a cutting board, I want it to be perfectly flat. So I took it over to the belt sander again. It would be really nice if I had a drum sander, but I don't, and I wasn't about to throw this in the planer. But the belt sander did a really, really good job of getting it really nice and flat. I just had to be really careful and take my time and go around kind of in a circle and go back and forth and just kind of randomly get it sanded nice and flat. When I felt like it was flat as it could be, I went back in and filled in any gaps or anything with a little bit of glue and some sawdust from this project, so that it would kind of at least blend in a little bit, and then just sanded that really nice and smooth one last time with the hand sander with I think I was up to a 200 grit at that point, and then went over to the disc sander and kind of cleaned up the edges, because some of those edges for whatever reason weren't really super clean, but whatever, I was just gonna make this look nice for cutting board purposes. Last step of the sanding was going in those edges with a piece of sandpaper wrapped around a piece of wood, and then I was just done. I was done. I was ready to be done, and I threw some mineral oil on it, and I called that puppy done, because oh my gosh, how cool is it? Okay, so as you can probably tell by the intro, I was super excited to do this project. This literally was one of the main projects I really, really wanted to do when I started this YouTube channel. I finally got all my pieces kind of together in my shop to actually do it justice. And yes, I totally royally screwed up the whole end grain versus side grain thing, but you know what? I'm learning. I didn't understand why people were doing all these end grain cutting boards. I didn't get it. Now I do. Totally makes sense. However, even with that, I have now had this Mario mushroom cutting board in my kitchen functioning as a cutting board for probably about a month or more now at this point by the time this airs. And nothing has fallen off. Nothing has gone awry. So I totally would encourage you that if you want to build the same project, to be sure to do it in grain. That would make the gluing process so much easier. However, if you end up having to do it the same way I did, it does work in the end. You just have to be patient and do your glue up and do your glue up and do your glue up and do your glue up. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. If you would, please, if you like this, hit the subscribe button. And be sure to hit the little bell next to it so that YouTube knows that you want to see more of my videos every week when I drop them. So thank you so much for being here. Bye, guys. Oh, that was creepy. Huh?